Okay, hello everybody. Thanks so much for being here. Welcome to this Thriving Thursday session about working in the nonprofit sector. I'm Stephanie Stockmer. I'm the Associate Dean of Applied and Experiential Learning in the College of Arts and Sciences. And I came to Pacific as the director of the Center for Civic Engagement. And in that role and in my previous work as a person who does a lot of work with community, I have come to get to know the nonprofit sector pretty well and am a partner of many organizations in the nonprofit sector currently. And I am here today with my partner in crime, Amy Tracewell. Amy?
Hello, everyone. My name is Amy Tracewell. As Stephanie mentioned, I am the director of the Master of Nonprofit Leadership program here at Pacific. We're in our second year of operation, and I was a student for the first cohort. So I have been working at Pacific for 8 years in university advancement previously as a grant writer and corporate partnership manager. So I am really pleased to be able to partner with Stephanie to bring you some more information about the nonprofit sector, what it's like to work within them, to help you all understand some trajectories that you might take with your careers.
So we're going to go through a few slides that give an overview of the sector and what the current picture is in terms of working in the nonprofit world. But we also really want this to be useful to you. So if you have questions along the way, you're welcome to put them into chat or ask them at the end as we're fielding questions more generally. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Amy to lead us off.
Thank you, Stephanie. So we'll just start off with what is a nonprofit? And so it's a special type of business that the IRS has identified as a business category. And so what makes them different from your standard corporations are that the profit that you earn is intended to go back into the organization to provide goods and services. So that doesn't mean that as an organization you don't make those profits, but that you build in structures so that those profits are reinvested back into the organization. So as an example, take Goodwill Industries. They're a nonprofit. They pay their CEO $7 million. That's a choice that they have. They could also pay, I think it's actually, I'm not sure that that's the amount, but they pay their CEO a lot. That's a choice they made. So that doesn't mean that as a nonprofit, you can't pay living wages, but anything excess over your budget, you have to reinvest. So there's different types of nonprofits with special conditions. There's 36 of them. And some examples are churches and other religious organizations. And those are classified as what's called public charities. So that's just a little bit different slice of the nonprofit language that we use. There's also organizations like Rotary and Lions. Those are a different type of nonprofit. Our Chamber of Commerce's, those are also classified as nonprofits with different stipulations in their IRS code. So it's just a different type of business that allows you to do good. So in Oregon, you can see there's 4.71 nonprofits per 1,000, which represents just over 19,000 nonprofits. So there's a lot of nonprofits in Oregon, and a lot of them vary in size. There's some, such as Albertina Kerr, who have hundreds of employees, and there's some who are all volunteer organizations that are doing things like here in Forest Grove. Valley Art is an art gallery that is run as a nonprofit, and everyone in that organization is a volunteer. So you have all sizes and shapes of organizations that represent that 19,262 number. Okay, so then in the nonprofit job market, you can see that the slide talks about the different types of job categories. There are categories such as program development and management, development, which is often the sort of a key word for fundraising, and then finance and bookkeeping. Those are your standard sort of pathways. 35% of Oregon nonprofits have open positions. So nonprofits are hungry for workforce, for new and mid-career workers to enter into the workforce. That's where they're seeing a lot of turnover and a lot of need to attract employees. And so what I always recommend to people when they're wanting to get into nonprofits is that you follow a passion of yours. So let's say you really believe in, you care and love animals. So if you wanted to get into nonprofits, I would pursue an organization that is close to your heart, that's mission matches your vision and values as a person, and then pursue opportunities within that in your areas that your skills are. So the slide also indicates that there's a lot of turnover at the full-time rate. You can see there's 26% turnover and 41% at part-time. So it's hard to build a life on a part-time job, as we know. And so some of the ways that nonprofits scale up are by offering some of these entry-level positions that are part-time. But when you're a student or when you're just kind of entering the market, that might be something that you're interested in, doing part-time work. Or if you're on the retiree side where, you know, you want to make sure you get benefits, you can, you know, there's lots of flexibility in the nonprofit sector.
And if I could add to that, Amy, I would say that in my experience of many friends in my personal network who have found themselves in the nonprofit sector, there tend to be two camps. One are the people who have a passion like Amy talked about, and they pursue that passion and find that passion enacted in a nonprofit sector. They really care about animals, they care about climate change, they care about a particular hunger, a particular issue. And so they find a nonprofit that they can do that work in and pursue that opportunity. The other are people who have general skills like finance and bookkeeping, and it may not be a particular cause that pulls them in a direction, but they just know that they want to put their skills to good use in a use that serves community. And they'll be happy in any kind of organization where they feel like the work that's being done in that organization is contributing something to society in some way. And so that's also something to remember. A lot of times in nonprofits, the people who are working there are people who didn't study nonprofits or didn't study the particular issue, but have the skill set that they are choosing to use in the nonprofit sector.
Excellent. That's a really good case to make too, because I didn't come out of my career early on to say, I want to work for nonprofits. I fell into that based on my skills, and then I pursued that because of the good in the world that we do. So thank you, Stephanie. Okay, so this is just a little bit more detail to explain that, you know, depending on the size of the nonprofit and how long they've been in business, if you will, you'll have different approaches to compensation and different capacities to provide you as an emerging employee the kind of support that you might need. And so that's an important thing to look into with any type of job. You know, what are the benefits that are offered? And this kind of explains the full gamut of, just like any corporation, small to mid-size organizations, the different packages that you can receive will vary. And so, you know, there's not, you can see 24% do bonuses for specific skills. That's a low number. So that's not like, if you're interested in the bonus world, probably nonprofits is not your best place to look for that. So then a lot of them use agency contract workers. So that's another avenue into nonprofits. You might find yourself aligned with, you know, an organization that hires out, for example, bookkeepers. And so you would work for that organization, and then they would assign you into a nonprofit as a contract. So that's another avenue. And you can see that number is pretty large. And then 59% of them have formal compensation plans in place. I think that again speaks to the size and longevity of the organization in the market. This slide's teeny tiny, and we can send these to you afterwards, but this is just another drill down of, okay, what are we looking at when we want to look at salaries and wages? This doesn't take into account some of the leadership positions, such as, you know, CEOs of high organizations. This is sort of mid to entry level careers. So you can see in Portland are the annual salary for the top 10 highest paying for the nonprofit organizations jobs in Oregon. The annual salary is about $43,767. So top earners are making, you know, $53,921. So this is a good place to recognize, a good time to recognize that, you know, all of your career paths that you take is you'll keep earning, and not, this is kind of where you're at the entry level and to mid level when you come into nonprofits. So just to kind of understand that. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Sorry to interrupt, Amy. I was going to say, I think it would be interesting to see a breakdown here in the nonprofit sector of the different kinds of organizations and where they are in their organizational development with salary. And where I'm going with that is that, as Amy mentioned, a lot of nonprofits are run largely by volunteers. There may be one or two paid staff on staff or part-time paid employees. And then you also have at the other end of the spectrum organizations like Albertina Kerr, Goodwill, that are really well developed. They've been around for a very long time. They have big organizational infrastructures with lots of employees and benefits and all the rest. And I suspect that those salary ranges are different depending on how long an organization has been around and the mission of that organization, whether they desire to become an organization that has a strong infrastructure and an organizational system behind it, or whether they want to stay kind of grassrootsy and volunteer run by a few different people who are really, really actively involved. So there may be some skew there in those salary numbers, depending on the extent to which an organization is well developed in that sense. And I don't know if Amy, you have any comments on that.
I think that's absolutely right. And I'm thinking about my own career as I went along. I started in some smaller nonprofits making a pay scale similar to this. And then in the smaller nonprofits, you're not going to see a lot of opportunities for growth within that because they have static positions. Maybe they have two full-time FTEs. One's the executive director, one's a program support. So there's nowhere to go if you in that organization if you want to grow. So what people typically do then is they take those skills and assets that they've developed and they apply for jobs in larger organizations in the sector, following their passion or following their skills. And then they build a career based on some of that job hopping, which is more prevalent now than it was when I was younger in emerging into the workforce. And I think that's why you see the high level of turnover in the entry to mid-level positions, is because people hit a ceiling and you're ready to grow and there's not availability within your current organization. So you seek out other opportunities for growth.
And the flip side of that may be that in a smaller organization, because there's not a lot of staff, there's not a lot of people around, you may have an opportunity to learn all kinds of different things about that organization and be really, really hands-on because they don't have a finance person, they don't have a development person. And so then there's more opportunity so that you're the one who's writing the grant because there's not a person who's specialized in that particular niche area. So there's some interesting dynamics there, things to think about in terms of what you might want to get out of working for a nonprofit and whether to look for those opportunities in smaller or bigger organizations.
Another point to that, Stephanie, too, is I've seen organizations where you come in and you're doing all those different things, and then there's a small staff, and then the executive director leaves, and suddenly you're the interim executive director because you're the only person who knows enough about the organization to help carry it forward. So there are a lot of opportunities within the confines of what we're talking about, and it's just a matter of keeping your mind open to pathways, I think.
That's right. And that reminds me of a great story from a Pacific student who was very active in the farming site that we had at Pacific a few years ago. It's now Boxer Gardens, but it used to be called B Street Farm. And she was an environment and education major and worked with somebody here locally to start a nonprofit. And pretty soon, I think it was the year after she graduated, she landed at the executive director role of that organization basically as soon as they started having a salary. So sometimes there are really amazing opportunities with those smaller organizations.
So this slide is just to remind folks that there is this organization. It's called maxlist.org. It's based out of Portland. Mac Pritchard is the guy who runs it. Really nice guy. It's a job board, and it's a very robust job board that just by default has specialized in nonprofit jobs. So this is the place to go if you're ever just interested in what the current market is looking like for nonprofit jobs, maxlist.org. And so I just wanted to provide folks with that resource here.
And I think it's a great idea for anybody who's interested in a particular kind of job or a sector like the nonprofit sector to just explore a site like MaxList and see what's out there, even if you're not currently job searching, just to get a sense of some of the different job titles that are out there, some of the variations in pay scale and experience required, and start perusing what those requirements might look like so that you can start to prepare yourself for what might be ahead if you do want to go into that sector.
Yeah. And you know this too from just anecdotally, don't look at the job and think, oh, I don't have all of those things that are listed. Look at the job and think about what the day-to-day activities might be in that job, and then don't hesitate to apply because when you're ready, because the thing is, studies show that you don't have to have all of the, certain things that they're looking for. They're looking for aptitude. They're looking for people who believe in the mission or who really have the skills, and they can train for other skills. So don't limit yourself when you see this. Just again, keep an open mind about where you might want to dip your toe in the water and see, and make some informational interviews happen. And Stephanie and I can also be a resource for you if you're exploring something, to do some additional coaching around how to frame out your inquiry.
Absolutely. I love to have those kinds of conversations with students. So these are some of the skills and competencies that we know the nonprofit sector is highly valuing right now. I will mention, actually, Amy can maybe speak more to this, that we have been working with professionals in the nonprofit sector as we have worked on academic programs here at Pacific to make sure that what we're trying to offer, and we'll get to that a little bit more in just a moment, aligns with what the sector needs right now. And many of these skills and competencies are transferable across sectors, whether you're working in a business environment or in the government. They also want people who are good at leadership and decision making and human resources management and that kind of thing. But others, like partnership strategies, may be a little bit more, not necessarily niche to the nonprofit sector, but in high demand, and skills that they would look very favorably upon if you already have some experience under your belt in those kinds of categories. So there's really no harm in trying to develop your skills and competencies in these areas, because they're going to be valuable pretty much no matter where you go.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. Exactly.
So in terms of preparing yourself and getting involved in nonprofit organizations, we have a few ideas, and this is probably just the beginning of a list. Amy, actually, maybe you could talk a little bit more to joining a board, because that's not always the first place that students' heads go when they think about getting involved with an organization.
Yes, thank you. So there's many different types of ways to volunteer for an organization. And when you talk about volunteering, most people think about things like, handing out food at a food bank, or planting some trees during an event, or cleaning up the beach with Sol on a day. So and those are all great opportunities. But yet another way to sort of go deeper and to learn a little bit more is to look to opportunities to join a board. And so the board is the governing structure of the organization. So the executive director reports to the board, and the board of an organization drives strategy. And so typically it depends on, the IRS requires that you meet 3 times a year as a board, and that you have a minimum of 3 board members. But some organizations can have, like the Pacific University, we have, I think, like something like 35. It's a huge board. So if you find a passion, find a passion that you have, and look at their board, go onto the website and see who's on their board, and ask about board opportunities. Because what you do then is you still a volunteer position, but you'll attend sometimes monthly meetings, sometimes quarterly meetings, where you'll hear from the executive director and from staff reports around the business of running that nonprofit. So you'll have an opportunity to sort of be a part of the C-suite without having to, commit completely to that organization. So you can understand how a nonprofit is governed, which I think is an important part when you begin working for a nonprofit, to understand the pressures and how that works in an organization with the CEO or with the president. It's an important pillar of the organization, and it sets it apart from other smaller corporations and other business types. Of course, big corporations have boards, but that's a different type. This is an opportunity to volunteer and to really put your mind to work to help drive strategy. So it's really fun.
And I'll add to that too, that I don't know all of you in the Zoom room right now, but I do know some of you, and you're of a different generation from me. I know that there are a lot of organizations that are actually specifically looking for the perspective of youth today, however defined. In some cases, that might be defined as an age range in the high school territory. In other cases, it might go all the way up to age 27 or 28 that they will consider youth. And in some cases, they may even have a designated spot on their board where they really want to make sure that the voice of young people is represented in some way in their board's organization. So they have a, kind of an allocation in their board representation for a young person. Oftentimes that comes with some understanding that somebody may be newer to the field, may not have the same kind of contribution as somebody who's maybe been involved with lots of different organizations and held leadership roles and the kinds of positions that you might be associating with board work. It is often the case that people are welcome to board service because of the perspective that they're bringing, not necessarily because of a certain number of years of experience in that kind of work. So I just wanted to call out the fact that young people are often especially welcome in board service because they want to bring in young people into the mix. I'll also add a couple more here from my universe of the McCall Center for Civic Engagement. We love to encourage people to volunteer as a way to get to know different organizations and different kinds of work. Just as one example, when I was in my 20s and living in Portland, I was really actively involved with an organization called Hands On Greater Portland. And the thing that I love about Hands On, and they're still around, in just Google Hands On Portland, and there they'll be. They're part of a national network of organizations that do done in the day volunteer projects where they help match people who want to just contribute a Saturday afternoon to organizations that don't need regular ongoing volunteer commitments, but just need somebody for a short-term opportunity. And the thing that I really liked about working with Hands On is that I got to know tons of different organizations in the Portland metropolitan area just by volunteering at different projects at different times of day, different days of the week, and being able to explore different organizations without actually making a commitment. On the other hand, volunteer work often does involve a commitment, and it's also a really great way to get to know an organization a little bit better, to see what the vibe is, to meet people that you may be able to have further conversations and informational interviews with, and potentially get yourself a reference for when you do apply to a job down the road. Similarly, with our civic engagement requirement, we often have partners in the local community who are working with faculty in those classes, and being a volunteer within those courses or doing whatever the civic engagement project is for those classes is also a great way to get to know those different kinds of organizations. And then there are other kinds of experiential learning besides civic engagement. So nonprofit organizations, just like businesses, often have internships. And just like in businesses, sometimes they're paid, sometimes they're not. Practicum, field experiences that might be built into your academic program are also really great ways to get some experience. So again, using some personal examples, when I was in college, I was a women's studies minor and have a great deal of interest in women's health issues. So I had an internship one January at my college that was with a rape crisis center. I had another in a different January that was with a YWCA breast health program. In both cases, I was an unpaid intern, but I was getting academic credit, and I learned a ton about different things in each case, but I had incredible learning experiences by taking internships. And in one of those cases, internships was standard. They had positions. I was able to pick from a few different options about the kind of internship I wanted to do. In the other case, it was by arrangement. They hadn't had interns before. I approached them to see what we could arrange for an internship experience. So just putting out there that there doesn't have to be a pre-existing opportunity to make an opportunity. Sometimes that works too. So we do have some academic options here at Pacific that are newish and in development still. So we have started to offer some undergraduate nonprofit organizations courses. We have our first set of those this year that are going through. So we had a numbers and nonprofits class in January that fed into a grant and fundraising class that's taking place right now. In the fall, for those of you who will still be around Pacific, I know some of you are seniors, we'll be offering another set of classes for next year: Foundations of Nonprofit Organizations, Organizations and Community, and Sustainable Nonprofit Organizations. And what we hope to have within the next year or so is an approved undergraduate certificate in nonprofit organizations that will communicate to potential employers that students have had some particular study and understanding of nonprofit organizations as part of their program here at Pacific. And then, as Amy mentioned, we also have the MNL. So Amy, you want to talk about the MNL?
Yes, thank you. So the Master of Nonprofit Leadership is a 13-month, when taken full time, it's a 13-month program, and it's all online, and it's made for the working professional. So it's made, the coursework happens typically on a Wednesday, Thursday timeline. And so it's 4 to 7 Wednesdays and then 4 to 7 Thursdays. And it's per credit. So there's 34 credits for the program. And it starts in January and then it ends in January. So it's bookended at both the January terms. We have a wonderful crew of professors who many of them are practitioners in the field. We have some classes that are meant to be relevant and timely. And so we poll our different constituents to find out what some of the topics are that are current for nonprofits and working in the sector. And we teach to those topics. It can be taken full-time. It can also be taken part-time to suit you. It is eligible for financial aid when taken 4 credits per semester. And it's just, I participated in it, and I'm obviously a big champion of it. And I would be happy to, meet with anyone if they have an interest in learning more about the program. And if you have any questions, of course, today, I'd be happy to field them.
And likewise, I'm always happy to talk with students about working in the nonprofit sector, or thinking about how to apply the passions that you might have in your future opportunities and jobs that you might be looking after. So we have our contact information here, and I think I'll leave that up. I think the next slide is just says questions. So I'll just say questions. If you have any, this would be a great time to chime in. I'll keep the screen share up there for a moment, just so that if you want to jot down any of our information, you can do that. But thank you so much for being here. Do any of you have questions that you want to ask? Okay, so I'm going to hang out for a minute. Maybe some of you will decide after we stop the screen share and stop recording that you might have some further questions. I'm going to stop recording now. So thank you all for being here with us today.